G'day everyone, and welcome to this Fire Mage guide for patch 7.1. Let's begin with stat priority. For Fire Mages, crit is godlike, and we value it above everything else. If 1 point of intellect is worth 1, then crit is worth between 1.3 and 1.4, varying on your gear level, with higher levels of gear valuing crit more. After crit comes intellect, then haste, which is greater, and about equal to versatility, which is then greater than mastery. That is for single target. For AoE, mastery is about as good as crit, which is greater than intellect, which is about as good as versatility, which is greater than haste. Now, the reason why mastery becomes better once you start attacking 4 or more targets is because mastery scales our ignite damage, and ignite has exponential scaling with AoE targets. Now let's go for the enchants. For rings, we want Binding of Critical Strike, which is plus 200 to crit. For the cloak, we want Binding of Intellect, which is plus 200 int to cloak. And the neck enchant is Mark of the Hidden Satyr, which does about 100k per proc. And for gems, we want 150 crit in each socket, except for one, which will be plus 200 intellect. Let's talk about the talents going in descending order. The level 100 talents is a choice between Kindling and Cinderstorm. Kindling is better in almost all situations. The only situation in which Cinderstorm is better is in constant AoE, where you also have very low amounts of gear. Level 90, we have the choice between Living Bomb and Unstable Magic. Unstable Magic is better for single target. Living Bomb is better against 3 or more targets. Level 75, Ice Flows is the best. Ice Flows gives you 3 charges of a buff that will allow you to cast while moving for your next spell. Level 60, Flame On is the best. Flame On resets the cooldown of both of your charges of Fire Blast and is currently required for the combustion rotation. Level 45, Rune of Power is the best. Rune of Power is a 2-second cast that gives you 50% increased damage inside the rune for the next 10 seconds. Level 30, Shimmer is objectively better, as it gives you 2 charges of blink and allows you to blink while moving. Cauterize is good if you plan on dying a lot, or if you have to soak an insta-kill mechanic that you otherwise wouldn't be able to. And level 15, Pyromaniac or Conflagration. Conflagration is best for most situations. It's certainly best for AoE, as it gives you a small pulsing dot on your target, but Pyromaniac does sim slightly higher and gives you a chance to instantly be able to recast a Hot Streak proc. That is the proc that allows you to instantly cast Pyroblast or Flame Strike, but it is subjective to RNG. It is only an 8% chance. So that being said, for AoE, your talents will look like this, and for single target, your talents will look like this. As for what relics to aim for in your weapon, you want the ones that increase Pyroblast damage, then Ignite damage, then that reduce Fireball cast time, then that increase Fire critical damage. But generally speaking, item level is more important than these traits, but you should be aiming for the Pyroblast and Ignite ones ideally. The progression through the weapon is pretty simple, and I've got to give credit to Ferty over at Icy Veins for making this incredible image, and I recommend you follow it for your weapons progression to the T. The rotation for a Fire Mage is pretty simple, with the notable exception of the opener, and there's one thing you got to keep in mind whilst playing a Fire Mage that trips people up. You can cast Fire Blast whilst casting other spells. With that in mind, let's begin with the opener. 2 seconds prior to pulling the boss, cast a Potion of Deadly Grace with a Fireball, And the reason why we use Fireball instead of Pyroblast is so we don't waste the duration of the Deadly Grace. Now, after your initial Fireball cast, if you have gotten a crit, open up with a Rune of Power. If you don't get a crit on your initial cast, keep casting Fireball until you do. Now, whilst casting Rune of Power, cast a Fire Blast, and once the Rune of Power is finished, cast your Pyroblast, Time Warp, and Combustion at the same time. Now, you should be going into this with 3 stacks of Phoenix Flames. Use your first stack, but not your second. Then cast Pyroblast, Fire Blast, Pyroblast, so that you have no more stacks of Fire Blast remaining. Now, use your remaining 2 stacks of Phoenix Flames with Pyroblasts woven. Now, use your remaining and last stack of Fire Blast, Pyroblast, Flame On, Fire Blast, Pyroblast, Fire Blast, Pyroblast, and with Time Warp that will have exhausted your Rune and your Combustion at the same time. Recast Rune of Power so that you get the most out of your Potion of Deadly Grace and Time Warp, and continue on with the filler rotation. The filler rotation is really simple compared to the opener. You are literally non-stop casting fireballs until you get a crit. When you get a crit, you cast Fire Blast and then immediately follow it up with a Pyro after your next fireball. So for a minute and a half in between combustions, you're just weaving in fireballs and fire blasts and pyroblasts. If you get to 2 stacks of Rune of Power, you use a rune. If you get to 3 stacks of Phoenix Flames, use a Phoenix Flames. That's all there is to it. So every minute and a half, you recast your opener and aim to have a Rune of Power up and 3 stacks of Phoenix Flames for that. And the rest of the time, you're literally just fishing for fireball crits. If you're on the move, you want to use Ice Flows prior to casting a fireball. If you run out of stacks of Ice Flows, use a Scorch instead while you're on the move. Now, AoE falls into 3 main categories. Let's say 2 targets, 3 targets, and 4 or more targets. For 2 targets, you don't change anything. You just do your regular single target rotation. That's it. For 3 targets, you start using Living Bomb, but continue to do your regular single target rotation. And for AoE, instead of using Pyroblasts, you start to use Flame Strike instead. Best of luck to you. Have a wonderful day, and I really hope that this guide helped you out.